Hello, hobby friends, and welcome to today's episode of Hobby Talk. My name is David Baez, and in today's episode, we are delighted to welcome back my good friend and unopened expert, Mike Cirincione, to talk to us about fakes in the world of unopened sports cards. Mike, welcome back to Hobby Talk, buddy. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very excited to be a two-time guest now. So I'm in ratified air right now. So I'm pretty
Many firsts
excited.
for you, buddy. I can't thank you enough, man. This has been fun, and I imagined when I was doing this that we were going to have a lot to talk about, and sure enough, we do, and we're going right into a topic that's kind of bittersweet, Mike. In detecting fakes, but I mentioned it briefly in our first interview about how important you were to me as a beginning hobbyist many moons ago. You were one of those folks that were helping me, buying the right product from the right sources. And I thought it would just be great to do an episode on this. And I thank you for doing that. So let's dive right into it, Mike. What are some of the most common places where fakes can be found?
Well, obviously the biggest place right now, and it's been this way for quite a while, is eBay. So, eBay is just what it is. It's buyer beware. And there's a lot of bad actors on eBay, some people might sell stuff that they know is bad. There's other collectors that just aren't educated enough and they're just selling it and they bought it, and it was bad and they didn't realize it.
Right.
And they're just moving it along. So it's really, really difficult. I know that, there's obviously companies out there like Baseball Card Exchange, guys like that do authentication. But there's still, even though we're in the hobby and we kind of know of them, there's a lot of people that don't know even now Baseball Card Exchange or any of these other types of authentication companies. So, they're just, they bought it in 1984. And, as far as they were concerned, it was good. And they turn around and they sell it and they find out, this was all resealed. Somebody, bought a 1984 Donruss wax box, opened up all the packs, and then, hit the Mattingly's, resealed it, and then, ended up flipping it at a card show. Yeah. And the guy bought it and he's like, well, I've had it since 84. Why would anybody, I've had it for so long. Why would anybody reseal this? Yeah. But, we've seen, even, believe it or not, we've even seen 1988 Donruss resealed, which is mind blowing. But my thought is any of that's resealed had to have happened in 1988 and 1989 when people thought, oh, this was gold. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, we thought everything they were producing was going to be gold.
They might have done us a favor by pulling all the Greg Jeffries out.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure that's what people were doing back in 88. They were looking for Greg Jeffries for sure.
Right. You brought up a really good point, Mike. It's really important for everyone listening and watching to, for this episode to understand that it's not to say that everyone that's selling these fake, packs that we're going to be discussing through this episode are the culprit. A lot of times, like Mike, suggested, it's just someone, it could be the very year, it could be in 84 when they bought it and they just thought it was a good box. They stash it in their closet. They unearth it 20, 30, 40 years later, and they just, they want to move it forward. So it's more about understanding how to detect them. Because unfortunately, it's out there, and sometimes the people selling them have no idea that it's them. That they have it rather.
And I would say probably the majority of the eBay sellers, probably like a 60-40 split, probably don't know.
Right.
And do know. It's just a lot of people are very uneducated about unopened, and now with the with the boom in the unopened space. Now we're getting a lot of new collectors in there, and they don't understand. They just think, well, it's sealed, so how could anybody have tampered with this?
Yeah.
And we obviously know better that, if there's money to be made, people are going to tamper with these packs.
Yeah.
And with the prices too, it makes it even worth more worthwhile for them to do it. So
yeah, and I'll touch on that second point you made, which is also super important. Sometimes beginners will come onto these the Facebook pages that we're alive and well in, and start saying, well, why am I going to pay so much more for this wrapped version of it? And there's a very good reason, and Mike alluded to it earlier. These are some of the most trusted sources for unopened material out there, and there's a few of them. That we'll dive into, and I'm interviewing, and we'll talk throughout many episodes about. The point is that the reason there's a premium for that material is because they're unbelievably trusted sources in the hobby, and in a hobby where fakes are alive and well. Like, I know there's in a lot of hobbies, but unopened, especially with the boom in price, it's very alive and well. It's super important to buy it from those trusted sources, and of course that comes with a premium.
that's it. You're paying for their expertise.
Yeah.
The other way you can do it is you educate yourself and, and learn. And the best way to learn, and this is how I learned, is you just got to handle packs. The more you handle the unopened packs, different years and different types of packs, and the more you look at them and you just study them, you're going to get much better at being able to spot fakes.
Yeah. So you bring me to my next question about, can fakes be found in all pack formats, packs, cellos, rack packs, and is one more susceptible perhaps than others?
I would say probably the easiest one for resealers, to fake would be wax. Would be a little bit easier for them to do. Cellos are very tricky to open them up and without ripping the cellophane.
Right.
But it can be done, and it has been done. And there are a lot of really, really good resealers out there that have no problem resealing cello packs. Racks too. I would say probably cellos might be the hardest of the three, just because of the cellophane is very easy to rip. Anybody that's ever ripped open a cello pack knows that they rip very easily.
Yeah.
A rack pack, what they'll do is they'll actually cut at the top along the seam. So it's very hard to detect, but it's much easier to do. You just need to, have a lot of patience to be able to cut it along the same line where they originally where they originally sealed it at the Topps factory. They're going to use that same to open it up and then reseal. And they're trying to get their seal as close to where the original seal was.
Right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Especially the vintage cellos, they're quite that plastic is quite brittle, and you start ripping one of those, late 70s, early 80 products. I mean, it just tears apart in your hand. So I could see that, and wax. Yeah, I mean, I could see, because even the authentic versions, Mike, with the wax seal is so weak or loose on them that even if you manipulate them too much, they'll pop right open.
And you got to remember too, they're sealing this up. Topps was sealing these up, in the 80s, not thinking people were going to be sitting on these things and keeping them unopened. They were meant to be open. So
right.
I think as the years keep going on, you may have more trouble with that, with legitimate packs to seal eventually, coming loose.
Right.
Just, under just the age of it. That's why I think it's important, like, to utilize a service like even PSA to get some of your high-end packs graded, not so much for the grade, but to protect the pack. So that pack was resealed. You're not having to worry about that back seal popping anymore.
Yeah.
And then when you turn around to sell it, at least you're giving somebody else that assurance that pack is unopened and untouched.
Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons that, as you know, since we talk so much offline, well, I gravitated more, instead of the raw versions, to the encapsulated, especially cellos, but also wax. I feel like just, my gorilla hands are just gonna touch them too much and eventually make them pop or break. But I just like obviously I like the look and feel of the encapsulated version, but I think it's just, to me, it's keeping them safe from humidity, from the elements, from my big old hands. I just think it's so much better to have them protected.
Actually, you brought up a good point and kind of spurred my memory. I know, and I'm sure you remember hearing this too. A lot of guys will get their packs authenticated and sent to PSA and put in the holders, so they don't have that urge to rip it. Much harder once you have that graded. Those cases are not easy to crack open.
They're not. And you know what? If I have a few 15-year-old scotches in me, I might get motivated one night. So when I grab it and it's in that hard plastic, I'm like, no, I'll put it back.
Exactly.
Too funny. So let's talk a little bit now about any particular years. Have any been historically targeted more than others by the folks that are creating these fakes? And if so, why?
Well, the ones that would be targeted, anything that's expensive. So they're looking back. They're trying to do 60s packs. They're trying to do 70s, trying to put stars showing. Obviously that's going to increase the value substantially. What you do see, and specifically with racks, which is my favorite product, by the way, is rack packs. I'm very big into racks as just a product. That what they'll do is buy, let's say, back when I was started getting back into Unopened in the late 90s, what they were doing would buy a 1975 Topps football rack, use that, open that up, take the football cards out, and then put 71 Topps baseball in there and reseal it.
Interesting.
So they would do that. The big thing for them and for those years, the early 70s, which was really big when I first got into Unopened, that a lot of resealers were doing that, because that was really where the dollars were at that point in time.
Right.
Was the header cards. It was very hard to get legitimate header cards from those years, so they would scour eBay and look for people that were selling those in order to stick them into these new racks that they created to pawn off on people.
To your point, when there's money, there's people try to find a way. And I think about the newfound boom in 80s material and how we need to be especially careful now with products, for instance, like 83 Topps that used to be $300, $400, that now are flirting with $1,000. Now you have to kind of be watchful, right? More than ever. I mean, I'm sure there was fakes back then, even at the $300, $400 price points, but now that it's double or even more than double, you have to be careful more than ever when you're buying this product.
From the 80s, especially 83 is actually a good year to talk about because of the explosion in the prices. But also that was the year that Topps had switched their gum from a thicker size to a skinnier size.
Right.
That skinnier size is a lot easier than for resealers to get, because they could buy 1987 Topps or 1988 Topps baseball, rip open those packs, use the gum to reseal in 1983 Topps. That's what they would do. You can't do that with the legitimate 82. So if I'm looking at a 1982 wax pack and I feel, and that's one of the things we can talk about a little bit later when I show you some of the examples, but you can feel the gum,
right?
Feel it's skinny and be like, right away, that's bad. Right away, I know it's bad. I don't need to look at anything else. I know the gum's bad, and that's it.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, Mike, I'm going to do that right now. As a matter of fact, it's a perfect segue here to some great examples that Mike has shared with us, and we're going to go through it. I'm going to be a little bit descriptive since we also do the podcast as well, Mike, to kind of talk through it. But here's a screen, Mike. You can see it, right?
Yes, I can. Yeah. So this is what we were just talking about. So 82 to 83, and I actually like to keep gums, the sticks of gum, and use that as a barometer when I'm looking at new wax boxes that I get in, to make sure that I feel comfortable that the gum is the right size. So that's why you could see there that there's a big difference between 1982 and 1983. So very easy to feel the top of the pack. So looking there at the upper left-hand corner, you see a 1982 wax pack. So you'd be very easy. You just put your hand right over it and you could feel the gum size and be able to tell that it's a 1982. And if you feel it's skinny like that 83 that's shown, you know right away this is a bad pack.
Yeah.
However, one thing that resealers love to do, and I've seen it a lot, is they'll break the gum up once they put it in the pack. So it makes it harder to tell the size of the gum.
That's right.
So that's a little trick that they do in order to try to fool you. So what they may do is you could see the 83 gum is maybe half the size of the 82. So they'll take pieces of gum from 83, crack it up and put it in the 82. Very hard for you to be able to tell now if it is legitimately an 82 that just wasn't handled correctly over the years, or is it a resealed pack? So that gets us to the middle upper picture where you could see those corner folds. Those are probably one of the best indicators to be able to tell if a wax pack is good or bad. Is you can see how that triangle shape is very distinct and uniform there. That's a giveaway that it's very hard for a resealer to perfectly line those back up, because you could see even now with that wax pack, you could see the wear on the where it's folded. So you'd be able to kind of pick up where if it's a resealed wax pack where they refolded it a second time.
Right.
So that is that picture. The last picture is much harder to see. I'm really just going to talk through it. It's the back of this 82 wax. And what you're looking for here is you're looking for first that the pack is solid, that it doesn't feel loose on the back. Then the other thing you're trying to look for is to see the wax. The wax, they use rollers when they seal these up. So you're trying to see the lines of the wax go across where the seam is in the middle of that pack to be able to see the continuation of the wax. What'll happen is when people reseal these things, they'll use a heat source and that'll melt the wax. Now, sometimes it's very hard. You got to really play with the pack and look under light. And I like to use natural light when I do that. But that's another area that you kind of want to look at to be able to get comfortable that the pack is good.
Right. No, that's some really good info, Mike. The key, to me, the dead giveaway to your point, and there's probably still a lot out there, is the gum. So, and that's an easy one to protect yourself. If somebody's trying to sell you a box and you have it in hand, if you could just grab a handful of the packs in there and kind of just feel it up, feel around a little bit, make sure that you're getting the right gum that correlates to that pack. That'll save you a lot of heartache down the road, especially, if you're buying an 82 to open up, that you're aiming for, obviously, Ripken and Lee Smith and some of those key rookies, which, you don't want to open up 36, packs to find out that you ended up with 0, right? So great information, Mike. I appreciate that. Let's go into another great example you shared with me. And there we go. So talk to us a little bit about this example here.
So now we move from the wax to the cello packs that we were talking about before. I use these as the example because in 1980, what ended up happening is Topps had transitioned from a very tight wrap. So from the 70s and back, when Topps wrapped cello packs, it was very tight. It's almost like a brick. That's the term we use in the hobby, that it feels like a brick. They went then to a much looser wrap to the cellos. So that's the example on the right. If you look at the right upper hand corner there, the one on the left with Ross Grimsley on top is a tight wrap. The one with Junior Kennedy is the loose wrap. So those are the two examples of the wraps. And as you can see from the upper left-hand corner, the backs of the packs, you could see the one on the left is much tighter. You don't see any spacing there, where the one on the right, you could see it's a little bit looser as far as it's not totally tight to the pack. And
Right.
that's obviously good. What you're looking for here is, again, just like in wax, you're looking for the seal on the back, to see there's definitely a pattern that you'll see going across to it. It's very hard to describe it, but if you look at a couple of legitimate cello packs, you'll definitely see what I'm talking about. You'll see that it's like a roller mark, but they're not using wax to do it.
Right.
They're using their just heat and their machines to go ahead and seal that up.
Right.
The last one is, again, the corner folds. So you can see on both of them, you're going to have nice triangular corner folds on there. Again, with resealed items, you're going to see like a lot of tearing. It's going to be very hard for them to reseal and get that nice tight triangles in there without tearing the cello packs when they go to reseal.
Right.
That's not to say there are definitely bad actors out there that can do it. So just because you don't see any rips in the cellophane doesn't mean it's a good pack. You really have to look at everything on a whole. The other thing you want to look at with this, because now you can see the cards as opposed to the wax where you can't, you want to look at the corners. You want to see, is there any wear? Do I see any wear at any of the corners that you wouldn't expect to see? You're going to see bending because, you're wrapping it. So there's going to be a tendency for the corners to bend downwards as this thing got wrapped. But is there any wear on the corners? So you want to look at that as well.
Yeah, those are some really good points, Mike. I'm looking at this and I'm just remembering some of the danger that I've avoided through the years, but I'm not going to lie. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I have been the victim, of course, of buying fakes, and early on, especially. And yeah, now it's so easy for me, having been in the hobby for a long time now, to kind of spot them. And obviously, in large part to yourself and to some others that have helped me to kind of find that the way to detect them. But gosh, in the beginning, you just kind of look at them and they all just look good. Maybe it's just that hunger to buy, right? But this is really good information for the beginner that's coming in, that's a little bit gun shy, to buy, to understand loose packs on cellos versus the tight packs, the gums as well. That's a key factor. I guess, Mike, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but before we move on to the next slide, is the gum conversation from earlier, would that technically apply in this case to the cellos as well in 82 and 83? Can that also be a call out there?
Yeah, but with cellos, it's much harder to see. You would have to be able to, a lot of the packs, the gum may not be so visible to you. It might be buried in between the pack. You might have to manipulate the pack a little bit and move it around to be able to get a good look at the gum. The one good thing, though, is 83. They're only at that point using the loose wrap. So
that's right. Yeah.
An additional point. So 1980 was a transition where they introduced the loose wrap. In 1981 and 1982, they continued using both a tight and a loose wrap. 1983 was the first year that Topps went strictly to the loose wrap, and there was no more tight wrap. So the 83, you're able to move the cello in order to see the gum. So you'd want to be able to move it. So you're kind of looking at the pack from the top, so you could see the top edge of the gum, because you want to see the skinny piece. From the side, you're not going to see it because they're both the same length.
Right.
That you're looking for. So you'd have to look at it from top to bottom.
Excellent point. Excellent point. All right, so let's move on here then to the next example, and share. This is regarding rack packs and the headers. So let's tell us a little bit about these two examples.
Okay, so the first one is a 1968 rack pack, which is in the upper left-hand corner on top. As you can see there, there's a hole in the header, which is like a circular hole in the header card itself, as well as in the plastic.
It's about the size of a bullet hole, I would say, right?
Yeah. And Topps did this starting with the 68 rack packs, and they continued this up until, I believe, the third series of 1971. At that point, they switched to the one that you see in the upper left below the 1971 rack, where you could see there's a cross hatch punch in there instead, where they would just use the little the peg hole, and they would just put that on, you know, at the grocery store to hang them up and not have this big hole in there anymore, and not do as much damage to the rack header card.
Right.
So that was just kind of like an innovation that Topps had. However, it helps in spotting fake packs. So as you can see at the right, I showed a close-up of both the 68 header card and the 1971 header card. And you could see from there, between the header card and that first section below it, where it's just out of view from the camera, there's a very, very thick seam in there. So the seam is very thick. Topps, after a number of years, in 1972, they transitioned to a thinner strip between the seams. So that is a way to be able to tell if an older rack is bad or not, is by looking at the seams of the rack pack. So in my example earlier, I talked about 1975 football racks that were very popular for resealers to use. The reason being, back then, 75 Topps rack packs were very cheap. They were under $100. They were really easy to buy. And the cellophane, the feel of the cellophane is very similar to the early 70s. So they wanted that wrapper, because that would be the one thing that would be so easy to be able to tell if it's a fake or not. So they wanted to use an authentic wrapper. So they would use the 75 Topps football and then reseal 71 Topps. However, you'd be able to look right at the seam and be able to tell, oh, the seam's bad, it's bad. And you know, makes it very, very easy. The other thing, and I kind of got sidetracked a little bit looking at the seams because I looked at the pictures. I love to look at the pictures of the racks. Is the circular hole punch. So I've come across 1970 racks before with the header card that looks like that 1971. And obviously it can't be. Topps only used the circular hole punches in 1970. So I don't even need to do any more analysis of a rack. I know right off the bat, that's a bad 1970 rack pack. I'm passing on it. And I don't even need to do any additional research. And you could do that up, right? I said up until 1971 third series. So you want to look for that circular hole punch, anything pre-71 third series. After, you're looking for the cross hatch punch in the header card.
Right.
And then you're looking at the seams then too. Yeah. So 71 is a very hard year to fake, in my opinion. Not because it's easy for them to create a fake rack, but there's a lot of telltale signs that if you know what you're looking at, you shouldn't have to be taken for a ride on those ones.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you blew my mind on that whole 70 piece. And honestly, it's good to know that. Great to know that, because I mean, it doesn't matter honestly what the price point is, but let's be real. What's the 1970 go for? We all know that's a lot. That's a lot of money. And it would be heartbreaking to spend. You know, you could. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, but God, if there's like a really good Hall of Famer in the front or back of that rack pack, you can hit 5 figures on that rack pack. So
Yeah.
that's good, really good information. Let's dive into the last example here, Mike, that you sent me. Can you talk a little bit about this one?
Okay. So the seams that I talked about in the earlier 70s and late 60s, early 70s racks, Topps used those seams religiously up until 1980. So 1980 was the last time that they had an actual seam where the cards wouldn't spill into the next section. 81, anybody that's familiar with the 80s racks knows those cards slide around in there a lot
Oh
because
yeah.
they're not individually sealed. Those sections aren't individually sealed. If you look at that back picture down below, you can see they seal it from the back along that line. So there's a line in the back of that
Yeah.
is where they seal those up, and that's obviously the line you need to look at if you're trying to spot if somebody resealed a pack.
The line you're
Because
referring to, by the way, that's like basically the little plastic, like if you were tearing the package open, right?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
and it's exactly probably halfway, right in the middle, running the length of the rack. You can
Okay.
see a line in the back. So it's only on the back. The front is totally plastic, so they're just sealing it once in the back of the rack when they wrap it, and then at the ends,
Yeah.
and that's where they're sealing these packs. But usually they're not going to mess. A resealer isn't going to mess with the ends on these types of racks. They're just going to open up that back seal as much as they need to in order to slide in the star cards, because
Right.
that's really what they're going to do at this point. For the 80s type of things, they're looking at, and this is a good example. You got Ricky Henderson's second year card there. You know, they may put that in there. They may put a Fernando Venezuela rookie card on top, or a Tim Rock Reigns rookie card on top. You know, that's
Yeah.
what they're doing. And right away, you've made a $20 to $25 rack for a common rack turn into a $50, $60 rack, just
Right.
like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The star power, that becomes a big piece of the equation, and obviously the main reason they're opening these up. So, but yeah, no, that's really good intel. And honestly, even with the 81, I didn't know. I guess I just didn't pick up on it. I knew they were loose, but I didn't connect the whole piece on the back there. So this is not only a good episode for everyone else, but even for myself as I buy more product down the road. So I got a couple more questions for you here, buddy. So what about the infamous Christmas rack packs that I see come in and out all the time in the years that I've been in a hobby? Can you touch on that a little bit?
those are I disdain them. I hate them. They're like the worst. And anybody that does, this is just a kind of an aside, anybody that does eBay searches for racks, you end up with like 5,000 Christmas racks and maybe two like regular legit
Oh my God,
racks. It
yes.
drives me crazy to have to sift through all that. There are filters that you need to use to try to eliminate any reference to Christmas or Xmas or holiday. And, there's ways around that. And I'm sure, David's already given us some advice as far as doing searches on
Oh yeah.
eBay. Those are definitely good tools to use the items to kind of eliminate items, hits that you have to eliminate all these Christmas racks. But getting back to our topic, which was the Christmas, this came about really when Mark Murphy came along, and he had this huge find of Christmas racks from the 50s and I think into part of the early 60s as well. And he sold these as legitimate racks that were sold way back in the day. And then as more people kind of started opening these racks and kind of more examining these racks and the cards that were in them, they really didn't add up as far as the story goes. And it seemed like it was more, somebody after the fact bought up a bunch of Topps cards and repackaged cards for the holidays and sold it at like five and dime
Yeah.
types stores, and you got your mom and pops, and selling them that way during the holidays for the kids. And the cards have already been circulated. You're going to get at best, graded 5 or 6 type
Right.
cards out of these. The value in them is what you see is what you get. So, I wouldn't count on finding any stars in between. If they're going to be any stars, they'll be showing on top or on back. But the other thing that really drives me crazy with these Christmas racks is back when Mark Murphy did it. Like I said, they were 50s and 60s, and it may have been partially a legit story as far as at least somebody buying up Topps product and putting them into racks,
Right.
homemade, and selling them, in the 60s and the 70s at Christmas time.
Yeah, maybe even like vending case. Well, maybe vending cases. Is that fair to say?
They could have definitely used vending cases as well to do that. But
I'm sure they would have kept the Mickey Mantles though, right?
No, I don't think any Mickey Mantles were making them. Although I think when Mark Murphy when he had his, I believe some of them did have mantles showing.
Wow.
But you have to remember back then, mantles were definitely nowhere near what they were, are in price now. Back when he discovered these items back in the 80s. So the big thing that this is what really drives me crazy with the Christmas racks and gets me all fired up is in probably the late 2000s, I started to see, Christmas racks or holiday racks with 1977 cards in it and 1975 cards in it and 76 cards in it. Never saw them before. These are just some guy decided, I want to get rid of my spare 1975 cards, went in his garage and started resealing these up and putting them on eBay. And all these 70s Christmas racks that you see out there, I can guarantee you the vast majority of them were never sold at wholesale or retail or anything. They're being pumped out of some guy's, garage and being put right up onto eBay. And they could probably, if you messaged them privately and asked them, you said, well, my favorite player is Ryan Sandberg. I'm sure, he would be able to miraculously show up with a Ryan Sandberg rack for you from 1983.
Maybe Aaron might be the buyer on that.
Subconsciously, Aaron kind of hopped in my head and made me say Sandberg. So.
That's too funny. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, to me, Christmas, the rack packs have always been one of these things where it's like avoid at all costs. Outside of being that eBay nuisance, it's just the probability of it being, a bunch of commons in mid-grade condition is insanely high versus maybe getting that legit 60s, maybe more pack fresh condition, maybe the outside chance. It's so slim at this point. It's just not worth it. I mean, if I'm going to go that deep into vintage, I rather just get one and shell out get it, certified by BBCE or just get it from a legit source and shell out the money that it, knowing that it's a right rack pack, a correct rack pack.
And you'll hear, anybody that's been in the unopened space for a long time will not touch Christmas racks or holiday racks. It's like, it's just considered garbage in
taboo,
our little niche of unopened. So
yeah, that was one of the it was many moons ago. That was one of the ones you and Tim were very helpful with me because I almost fell into that trap many moons ago. You probably don't remember that conversation, but we had it.
It's very easy because somebody new that kind of wants to start reliving their childhood and they want a rack from 75. They'll go on eBay and there are all these Christmas racks. So if I'm new to the hobby and I don't know anybody else that's collecting, I'm like, look, there's all these racks on eBay. They must be good. There's like, 100 different listings. So of course I'll buy one. Yeah. And then later on, when they get more into the hobby, they realize they were taken advantage of and that these weren't legitimate, what they thought were legitimate racks.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mike, have you ever been the victim of buying a fake pack back in your early days? I imagine now you're insanely well versed in the topic, so I'm thinking it's early on, right?
And I honestly think that the best way you learned and the way I learned was you gotta you make some mistakes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I made some mistakes along the way, and I bought a 1970 rack pack,
man.
and it cost me, I could still remember, $371 at the time. So obviously it was a while ago. It
Yeah.
wasn't, now I would be sick now because those racks go for 5,000.
Plus, yeah,
So I had the rack. I thought it was good. The guy that did it used, like I said, probably a 1975 Topps football rack to do it.
right.
He had a legitimate 1971 header card in there. I actually still have the header card. I kept the header card from it.
The bitter memories.
Yes, it was definitely a bit of memory. And what ended up happening is through eBay, I met a fellow collector, and he clued me into the fact that not necessarily on the seams and the header card and what we talked about now, but just the cards themselves that he saw on front. He thought that it was a bad rack.
Yeah,
So I ended up opening that rack, as painful as that was. And
man.
sure enough, you could tell the series were all mixed. You're not going to have mixed 1970 series.
That's
So,
right.
you
Yeah,
know, so even if they have the right series showing on top and back, all the cards in the middle don't necessarily need to be from that same series, because the resealer's counting on you keeping that rack resealed. They're
yeah,
not counting on you opening it up now because you're paying, thousands of dollars for it at this
yeah,
point. So,
yeah.
that was my most painful lesson, was that 1970 rack. And then there was a 1978 wax box that I had purchased when I first got back into the hobby. That then, once I became more educated, I went back and looked at all my wax that I had. And this one wax box I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't like the way they looked. I
Mm.
was very uncomfortable with the seals on the back, and I opened them up, and sure enough, the cards were all commons. I think the biggest star that I hit in the whole box was like Gaylord Perry.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. You have
So,
that many packs, and especially 78. That's loaded. You know, that's
I got
crazy.
I got taken big time on that 78 wax
Yeah,
box. Again, I paid $400 for the box. So,
yeah,
yeah, $400 is still, it's not chump change,
yeah,
but I kind of just scratched it off as, it's a lesson learned, and definitely, I feel more comfortable now with what I have as far as my wax goes,
yeah,
that I went through it, and was able to weed out anything I wasn't comfortable with,
yeah.
and rip them open, as painful as that is. And people that know me personally know that the thing that I hate the most is to rip open
Oh
any
man, yeah,
really good, authentic, unopened, especially from the 70s.
yeah, yeah. To your point, it became a pricey lesson, but thinking glass half full here, it made you that much better at detecting them, made you that much more knowledgeable about the product, and it confirmed right any suspicions that you were having right out of the gate in those both examples that you gave. So, I guess with something bad does come something good. Unfortunately, it's pricey.
Exactly. And the other thing is, it takes, and the reason why I opened it is it takes it off the market.
Yeah,
I don't want the worst thing that could happen is, and it could have easily happened in our example that we used earlier. What if all of a sudden one day, unfortunately, I'm playing hockey, I have a heart attack, and I pass away. My wife doesn't know boxes of cards. She would sell my collection, and
mhm.
that 78 wax box would have ended up going to some other collector. And it's a bad box. It's a bad box, but
I'd end up
but
buying it.
but you know, that's how these things happen. So it's not
Yeah.
always that seller that's ripping you off. It could have been 2, 3, 4 sellers ago, and it
Yeah.
just this stuff is just circulating around and around. And the more you educate yourself and get these bad packs out of the hobby, the better it is for everybody else.
Yeah, very, very good point, Mike. And to a much lesser degree, I kind of took the same thought process when, when I've been burned, I just like, all right, oh well. Even when I wasn't, and in some future episode, I'm going to show that famous video of me opening up. I'm not going to give up in this episode what happened, but even in that one, I just felt like, you know what? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but let me open it and let me record myself opening it and help my fellow hobbyists that have helped me and detecting whether or not it was a fake. So, in my case, I will, if I ever get burned again, I would continue to do the same thing for the same reason. So let's end things here with my traditional fun question here, Mike. So what's one product that you routinely enjoy ripping, but you're almost afraid to tell anybody, and why?
Oh, this is actually an easy one because I enjoy doing it with my son, but it's kind of silly, kind of 1989 Fleer baseball.
Nice.
I love ripping 1989 Fleer baseball. We love to look for the Billy Ripken, FF era card. And, when we rip it, you would think you hit the lotto. We're all jumping up. Oh, look, I got the Billy Ripken. I got the Billy Ripken. And it's the greatest thing. And
That's cool.
There are some good other cards in there. There's the Johnson, there's the Griffey in there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really cool cards that are in that product. And it's cool. Still a cheaper product, so I don't mind opening that up. So that's my answer.
Very cool, Mike. Mike, I can't thank you enough. This, I think, to me, I was mentioning it earlier. I really wanted to do an episode like this to help the fellow hobbyists out, with some essentially 101 on what to do with certain product that's gaining popularity. And you gave some amazing insight, some very nice examples. Thank you so much for that. And, appreciate all this good information.
You're welcome. We could talk easily 2-3 hours on this topic, as you know.
Yeah.
We just kind of did a lot of the highlights and a lot of the easier things to pick up on. And I'm sure, we will have plenty of other opportunities in the future to talk about this some more.
Oh, absolutely. You know that. Thanks again, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.